Hello everyone! Welcome to another video. As you can tell, I got my hat. So, thank you to whoever sent it from Amazon, because you didn't include a gift receipt, so I think I know who it is, but thank you. Anyway, as promised, we are doing the Rogers video today. For all of you experts out there that know a lot about Rogers, I promise you, like I do in all my videos, I will bring some content that you maybe didn't know about. I want to make sure everyone at the highest level and at the lowest level comes out of each and every one of these videos with at least learning one new thing. And I think Rogers is a obviously exposed hero. Everyone knows about him, but I think there's a lot of facets of Rogers gameplay that a lot of people don't know about. So I'm going to tackle the basics of how to play Rogers, where Rogers fits in, and how his skills work in this video. And when it gets to the perfect matchups and showing replays of how to counter Rogers, I'll do that maybe in another video. We'll just see how long this goes, and we'll decide from there. So, first thing I want to do is go over the skills, right? Let's talk about Rogers' first skill, Tyrant Cometh. Tyrant Cometh is a 20% guaranteed hit skill, and what it says is this attack you can trigger. He's going to have a normal round attack. Slot 1 will go, and it can trigger all of his other skills, including his gems. But if Tyrant Cometh triggers, he cannot have a regular attack, or a gem attack, or an awakening attack. No melee damage will be done on this slot until all the other slots go, and it's his turn to act again. On the turn that he acts, the next turn, his base melee shot will be replaced with the Tyrant Cometh damage. And he will still get to trigger his skills again. And I've never seen a Rogers trigger Tyrant Cometh again, but I think if he does, the following skill once again will hit the Tyrant damage skill, but I do believe he gets to attack that turn. So, without further ado, we'll get to the most important skill in the game. Probably... and while we're on that, this skill says that the attack will hit, it will be a crit, and the damage will be increased by 196% at level 49. So 200% at 50. And what that means is that his base damage dramatically goes up. It's not just damage, it's attack. So the game wording in English kind of messes that up a little bit, but just know that when it says attack, usually it means it's a lot higher of a value, sometimes up to 4 times as much damage, which I will show you in a moment. But I'm trying to speed this video up to keep everything nice and fast and short. So, second skill, Defensive Stack. This is the most overpowered skill in the game. It has an 80% chance to trigger, and it says that all of Rogers' troops will have 30% damage reduction. That's not increased defense. It's a buff that cannot be debuffed at the moment. We know that skills like Sniper for Nekojiro do not affect it. We know that Plasma Bomb does not go through it. If 4 stacks of Rogers trigger this skill, he will have a 120% immunity to damage, which means every damage that lands on him will do 0. There are some counters to Rogers, and we will get into those later. But as of right now in the game, even the best counters to Rogers are only just a fair matchup at best. It's still not leaning in the advantage like most commanders. They have a counter. But what you need to know that if you have a level 60 and you get 3 triggers of this, the fourth or any damage done to that front row will have 90% reduction. The 4th time it goes off maxes it out. But it's only 80%. It can miss. You can go 10 rounds with Rogers, which most people never watch a fight that long. They will end up skipping the match before they ever go 10 rounds because it takes a long time because all the skills are triggering over and over. But if you do go that long, occasionally you can get 3 slots in a row that don't trigger it, and the odds of doing that are 1 in 8 times 1 in 8, 1 in 64. 64 times 8 is, I don't know, what is that, 512? I don't know, a lot. It's very rare, but it can happen. And when it does, Rogers will take 10%. He'll still have 90% mitigation. But the reason I pointed out is that damage can be done to Rogers later on in the matchups. It's just exceptionally rare. And it was, what? That can't be right. 8 times 8 times 8. 8 times 8 times 8. 512. I was right. Okay, 1 in 512 chance. Super rare if you have level 60 skill to get hit by Rogers if he survives the first round, which is going to segue us into the next argument, is that Rogers' strength comes from his invulnerability status. He is the quintessential turtle defensive commander. If he survives his front row, because remember, he needs all 6 slots triggering, because the skill says once you get a round and you get to re-trigger your skill, your stack resets on everyone. So if you don't re-trigger it, you don't get to put your stack on top of everyone. And everyone else's stacks re-trigger on you. So when his stack comes around, if there isn't units in slot 1 because they got one-shot by Golem or Stella, then you only have 5 slots left that are still triggering your skill, which lower the chances of you being able to hit immunity. So you want every slot to survive the first onslaught from whoever's attacking you. And there are counters to it. We'll talk about that. But as of right now, for the most part, most people don't even play those commanders. So as a general rule, just survive round 1 and you win. And it's going to be a long, drawn-out battle. And I will show you one of those battles here in a moment. And I'll try to rush through it to get the best point out of it. But that's the whole point. And the reason that there's a debate about this is because a lot of people realize Rogers doesn't hit very hard, which is why Vera doesn't use Rogers, because he's a terrible one-slot bust commander, as opposed to Golem, his Golem is so big, it's a versatile defensive commander and offensive commander as needed. And he can't use Rogers like Golem because Rogers' Tyrant Cometh skill literally makes him not attack for a turn, which means that if he's going against somebody, they can just hit his second slot and he loses without doing any damage. So it's not a massive setback, but you don't want to gear Rogers like the way you gear Golem. You'd have 2 sets of Rogers if you did it that way, but this is a pretty big hindrance, this skill, if you don't use it correctly. So, talking about gear, because Rogers is the type of hero that you stick in a stronghold, he is most susceptible to infantry, right? He's an airship commander. Infantry does best against him. And naturally, the most expensive best hull in the game is the Apocalypse Hull, and it includes, at level 20, I think it's 87% resistance strengthened. Resistance weakened effect. And what that means is that whatever your matchup is, you have a resistance to it. So airships are stronger against infantry when they're normally weak. Now don't get me wrong, they're not better than infantry, they're just less vulnerable. And that goes for the rest of his gear. When you put Rogers somewhere and people know he's there, they're coming at you and they're countering you, and usually it's with infantry commanders. So the ideal gear for him is resistance weakened effect and Ghost Mask and Speed of God. They both stack more resistance weakened effect, making his matchup against Stella and other infantry commanders better. However, the Tier 9 meta, Tier 9, Tier 10, 11, kind of says that this gear doesn't work very well against that matchup. So you can't really use the strengthened gear for those infantry commanders against him as well. But more research is warranted on Tier 9, Tier 10, Tier 11 on these strengthened weakened gear. And I personally run Dodge on my Rogers because I use them for fighting monsters for the most part. I do use them in PvP, and I know the most important thing is surviving the first round, and I get plenty of dodge from my mastery and my gear. So with this item alone, I have 140. I used to wear Dodge Thalmus, but now I use the Ghost Mask, and I tend to dodge quite a bit. I have never lost to a monster with a level 7 or 8 event dragon monster, the ones that give 3-day and 24-hour speed ups, with this gear. Never lost a monster with them. So 10,000 leadership. This set of gear never lost a monster, never get hit. So dodging is good on him, but a lot of people will go for defensive, but it really comes down to the matchup. And the matchup being that if you know you're going against an airship, there is no point in trying to out-dodge an airship because an airship is going to have high enough accuracy as it is, but infantry commanders, on the other hand, and Golem is the main one you have to worry about, right? Blader, not so much. I know Blader people are going to hate me for that, but if Golem hits you with a crush, you're not going to dodge it. So going pure defensive gear, fabrication on him is totally fine. But going against, Stellas and the X's and Plasmas, if they skimp out on the accuracy gear, you might get lucky and survive that first round and then really put a beating on them if they want to send a full march at you, which most people don't. Okay. I did talk about the Awakening, right? The Awakening is typical airship Awakening, no big deal there. None of his skills trigger if Tyrant Cometh triggers, but let's go into his first replay. So what I want to show in this replay, and to kind of wrap this up, Tyrant Cometh, the skill, says it does 200% bonus damage. So if he hits for 100,000, you would expect Tyrant Cometh to hit for 300,000. Or, yeah, 300,000. But it doesn't. It hits quite a bit harder. So in the first replay, we're going to put pure... let's save that. There we go. This is the first replay in pure defense. No damage. This is just survivability. Survive the first round so you can keep enough troops alive to keep the battle going on and on and on. That's always going to be the best gear setup unless you're going against a Rogers, and I'll show you why in a second. So in this first matchup, it's a level 20 monster. The APOC hull is on, and what you're going to see is slots 1 and 2 are normal rounds. So we'll wait. There is slot 1, 75,000 damage. And damage does vary on crits. There's a bit of a dice roll there. All right, we got another defensive stack. Slot 2, there's 80,000 damage. Okay, very low damage for a tier 9 airship, but that's because I'm wearing all defense gear. Slot 3, we're going to get a Tyrant Cometh. So you're going to see right now we have an Airship Awakening. We're going to get a Tyrant Cometh. And we're going to get a defensive stack. So everyone gets buffed. The Awakening doesn't hit. It gets ignored. It will not be used when Tyrant Cometh comes about. So that literally just cost me an Awakening. That is unfortunate. Because that's a good way to get a bunch of kills on troops if you have one slot bust. But anyway, for this replay, we can just wait till everything goes around. They're just trading turns back and forth, back and forth. I use the Cancer Gem. I like the bonus defense. If I get it to hit on slot 1, I have a really good chance of surviving a fair fight against a Golem or a Stella who's trying to one-slot bust me. So I prefer Cancer because as far as I'm concerned, when it comes to Rogers, you need to survive round 1. Once you survive round 1, you win. That's it. Unless you're going against another Rogers. And then a little bit of damage gear might help you. But that's a rare case for most people. How often do you get into, face-to-face, toe-to-toe max gear versus Rogers? All right, here comes the Tyrant Cometh. That's the second slot attacking. We had Tyrant Cometh triggered last round, so it's going to attack this round. Their third slot's going. They attacked first. Here comes our third slot. Here comes our base damage. Instead of 70,000, we get 708,000. Our damage multiplied by 10. It should have went up 200%, but instead it multiplied by 10. Now, what you'll notice, I didn't get any other skill triggers. If you rewatch this, if you push the back button on your keyboard or whatever and go back 5 seconds, you'll notice that that third slot only did his base damage. That's actually rare. He can trigger his other skills, but for whatever reason in this replay, he didn't. But he ended up hitting for 10 times, almost 10 times as much damage. It turned out to be like 9 times as much damage because his normal hits were 75 to 80,000. His Tyrant Cometh was 700,000. So a tremendous hit, 9 times the base damage. I ended up losing that. I didn't lose any troops, but I lost the fight because I didn't kill the ship enough. That's what happens when you don't have enough attack gear. You can remedy that by putting infantry just in one slot. The tier 9 infantry work with airships, so you can keep triggering your skill, and they do far superior damage, which is what we're going to show you in this replay. In this replay, we changed out the 2 barriers for 2 attack items. 2 Apocalyptors, a little bit of accuracy, a little bit of attack and crit. Good mix up there. I didn't overly go into attack. The reason I didn't use a Thunder, which would be more of would be a better raw damage item, but Thunder lacks accuracy, and you do need accuracy. And frankly, I don't want to take a Thunder to level 20 or 20 or higher. So I use Apocalyptor. I'll take the accuracy. There's nothing worse than missing. And we will run those numbers now. Now, what we're going to see here is the infantry airship or infantry work with airship skills, as I mentioned, and they work with those weapons. Thunders will not work with tier 9 infantry, I think. I need to verify that. I don't have proof of that, but I'm pretty sure. Okay, so in this replay, we're going to see a normal 1 skill. You're going to see just a defensive stack and the airship awakening. We didn't, in the last replay, if you remember, I mentioned there wouldn't be an awakening, and we didn't see that. So if you want to go back a minute, you'll probably see that now. Second slot, nothing special here. But on our third slot, we're going to get a Tyrant Cometh. So their third slot's going to go first because they had the defensive advantage. Here comes our third slot. We are going to trigger. We're going to hit Tyrant Cometh. We're going to hit defensive stack. We're going to hit Cancer. That gives everyone defense. And no attack there. Okay, so my attack gets used for the next time Tyrant Cometh comes around. So we're going to wait for this to go all the way around. And we're going to note the damage. So that was 187,000. And oh, here comes another Tyrant Cometh. You know what? It was 190,000 on the first attack, 194,000 on the second attack, Tyrant Cometh on the third, and then 187,000 on the fourth attack. Now what we're waiting for is that's the first row to attack. Our first row gets our first unit in the first row gets to go now. Here it comes. He gets to do a awakening and a defensive stack. Perfect. Here's the damage, 188,000, which is almost just twice and a half as much as when he didn't have damage gear on. So he's hitting really hard, 2.5 times harder. Here comes the second slot. He gets his normal awakening, and he hits for 180,000 again. So a little more than twice and a half for his base damage. This third stack is coming next. It's going to be a Tyrant Cometh, and we're going to check the damage on that. He gets the awakening. He gets the Light of Libra in his rod, and he gets the defensive stack. And here comes the Tyrant Cometh hit from last round. 1.7 million, 169 million. Okay, and he got the Awakening. I didn't check the Awakening damage. Oh, I wonder if it was 10% of it. I don't think it was. It shouldn't be, but I'm going to check this anyway. Okay. Oh, wait, here comes another one. 73,000. 73,000. No. It is just the base damage. It is just the base damage. Wasn't the Tyrant Cometh damage. So if you're actually watching this replay and listening to me, if you weren't listening and you were paying attention, you will see that slot 3 had the Tyrant Cometh of 1.65 million. Slot 5 and slot 6 had their Tyrant Comeths, and they were 1.64 million. And then slot 6 that we just missed, go back 10 seconds, and you'll see those infantry that have exactly the same amount of unit, 450, with 3 Tier 9 infantry are 450 units. The Tier 9 airship Genesis is 450 units. And the infantry hit for 4.43 million. 4.43 on their Tyrant Cometh, because the infantry could trigger the Tyrant Cometh. So the Genesis was 1.64 million on its Tyrant Cometh. The infantry was 4.43, almost 2.5 times harder. And that's because infantry hits 2 to 3 times harder per unit value than airships. They just don't have the defense and HP. So infantry by nature are the glass cannon. So when you're running a Rogers, it's great to use your airships because they mitigate damage and they have high HP and high defense. But you know, if you get into a really long, drag out, dangerous, big fight with a big boss Rogers, it doesn't hurt to stick infantry in slot number 6. They have higher dodge anyway. They'll probably dodge most of the Awakenings. But most importantly, they're going to have way higher DPS. And this round actually is going really fast because I'm in pure damage gear. But in a normal Rogers fight, when you're in pure defense gear, these rounds can go 20, 30, 40, 50 rounds. And at some point, you guys just stop doing damage to each other. So anyway, that's how I recommend playing Rogers. Pure defense gear up front. You do take a damage beating by not having the damage items, but by surviving the first round, it guarantees that you get to keep going and going and going and getting more and more hits off. And those Tyrant Comeths, you can bank on them to hit just as hard as you would, well, if you had pure attack gear on. Not even. No, pure attack gear, you were doing 200,000 base hits. In regular gear, you were only, or in defense gear, you're hitting for 70,000. So even though your damage almost triples in pure damage gear, it doesn't matter too much because your Tyrant Comeths are still hitting for almost 10 times as much as a normal hit. Now, yeah, you do hit a lot harder with the attack gear and the Tyrant Comeths with your pure attack gear on, but you don't need it. In order to be powerful with Rogers and to win with Rogers, you need to survive round 1, and then from there on, you just win the long game. And if you're going against a Rogers, then you can decide if it's better to go damage gear up front, because Rogerses aren't going to one-shot each other's slots in the first round. So the more damage you do to them early on, the better your chances of breaking them down as the game goes on for 50 or 100 rounds. But that's the intro to Rogers. More countering Rogers and getting the most out of Rogers videos to come. But that'll whet your guys' palate, so thanks for watching the video. I hope you learned something. If I missed something or I didn't point something out, put it in the comments below. Subscribe to the channel. Join us on Discord. Join us on Line Chat. If you and your buddies just started watching my channels and you got a bunch of stuff to watch in that playlist this is a part of, get to it. There's a lot of stuff to learn. If you have any questions, like I said, hit the comments up. I'll reply to them. If you want to join the line group, just hit me up. My name is Melt.AOW. Add me by line ID. And get your buddies and guildmates online. You know, that little line app is so much better than the guild chat function and the in-game mail function. And every morning or every day, you can just check on your line app group to see what the guild's up to and what news is going on. So anyway, thanks for watching the video. We'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.